Hello guys, so welcome to the Odin Talks, and yeah, and we have our Shruti ma'am, so we'll be taking over with the introduction and all. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. A very warm welcome. Um, Today we have with us Avinash Mishra. We're going to have a very interesting session. Um, Let me introduce Avinash first, and then we can talk further. So, Avinash Mishra is the data science manager at SBI. He is involved in leading and building scalable data science solutions and business growth models. I will let Avinash speak more about his work and the application of data science in different sectors within the BFSI domain, since he's representing one of the biggest public sector bank in India right now. I'm sure he'll be able to give us a lot more insights on how data science is implemented in the BFSI sector. But that is what he does right now. But previously, he has got lots of experience as lead data scientist and senior data scientist at various globally recognized, globally reputed companies as well. Avinash, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Shruti, for having me here.
Great. Looking forward to a very exciting discussion, Avinash. But could we start with you telling us a little more about your work in data sciences, especially in BFSI, and how it all came to be?
So yeah, before we jump directly to BFSI, I would like to start my journey of data science, how actually I got into this field. Then definitely I'll cover like how data science is working specifically into BFSI. So I think data science, first time I got exposure when I was doing BTech, and there was two subjects about general artificial intelligence and neural networks. So that was my early stage exposure into this data science, AI, ML things. And later point of time when after pursuing a master's, when I went back to Tokyo, I spent a significant amount of my career as a data scientist, and currently working into BFSI at State Bank of India. So in SBI, or maybe I can say in general, any of the public sector or private banks in India, as well as globally, data science is, I think, one of the key driver of the business. So people are doing like starting from like middle management to top management, board of the directors, everybody just keep talking about the data science because they know there is a value out of it. And it used to be a kind of a support system before, but now a lot of banks, they have created a center of excellence kind of things. And it's one of the key driver. It is contributing very significant amount of revenue in terms of business growth, or in terms of, let's say, lending. So yeah, data science is a key in any of the banking system. And I think one of the main reason which I have felt so far is because of the richness of the data.
Right.
Because in other areas like data are there. Let's say if I talk about e-commerce or CPG industries, also they do have the data, or like even some big giants like Facebook, like Meta, Google, and those companies who have collected the data over the period of time. So they are also doing pretty good work. But when it comes to BFSI or fintechs, they are getting a kind of very clean and structured data. Let's say if I'll go to any bank, then they have a kind of pro forma. Specifically, I'm talking about the India. So, okay, or maybe it's online form. So we have to provide all those details. So data is pretty much structured, and it's good to like understand the insights and then provide accordingly back to the customers. So yeah, that is like in a nutshell about what is happening in data science world, specifically into BFSI industry.
Right. So what actually got you interested in this field? You are from computer science background, but out of all the different things that were a part of it, what made you choose data science as your career?
I think there were, as I said before, when I was doing my master's, that was also into computer science. Then at that time, I got an opportunity to work with some of the basic sentiment classification kind of models. At that time, I was very much fascinated to understand how actually these NLP and machine learning works. And so I got fascinated from that time. And when I joined like some companies in Japan, then I realized a lot of very, you can say PhD and masters folks, actually they are doing into something in data science. So everybody was talking about data, about ML, about AI. So I started reading like blogs, some notebooks on Kaggle, conferences. Then that's what motivated me.
Right. So compared to what we are seeing now, when you started out, the industry was at a much nascent level. It was probably a world apart from the kind of technology we are seeing now in ML, AI, and all that. So how has the journey been, and what are the key changes that you see, the way the field has evolved over the years?
I think now when we started, I mean, as a data scientist, I think it was more on, let's say, more like analytics kind of things. We have to get the data and do some analysis on top of Excel, or there used to be some like basic like SAS, SPSS kind of tools we can utilize and build some kind of very basic machine learning models. But I think nowadays I see people are very good in Python, R, Scala, PySpark, these kind of tools and technologies and programming languages. So people are getting more comfortable with this thing. But at the same time, I think there is a good transition from, let's say, analysis to, you can say, a journey of deep neural networks, or let's say something like a generative AI and large language models. So now domain expertise is one of the key. That's what definitely I can see. I mean, now you can be data scientist, you can do some courses online, and you can educate yourself about basic requirement of data science. But at the same time, in terms of hirings, or in terms of, let's say, being recognized into data science, well, you need to know a specific domain. So let's say BFSI is one domain. If somebody is working on e-commerce, so a person has to have a very thorough and deep understanding about the data and what exactly. So it's more like try to mimic using ML models, but at the same time, you have to be more realistic.
Correct.
So that's what I can say.
So that brings me to the next question. So you've been with the banking sector at least for 2 years now, with SBI specifically. Please help us understand the different applications of data science in this domain. You yourself are heading a few functions within, for different functions, including fraud detection. So these are the things that we keep listening. But if you could explain, 5, 6, 7 verticals in which the application is actually found, that would be great.
So in banking, across, I can see risk is quite important, because it's directly, like, banking is definitely directly associated with the finance. So risk factor is always there. So risk modeling is definitely one of the key area that I think pretty much all the banks are working upon. And there are something like operational efficiencies. So whatever is happening, so use data science algorithms like Monte Carlo simulations, or hill climbing, or some kind of optimization mechanism to solve operational efficiency, or maybe something like cost income ratio, those kind of things. So basically operational efficiency is second one. First one was like a risk.
Yes.
And lending, because the more and more like this millennial and Gen Z population, they are not willing to visit to the branches, but they are more prone towards like a very small screen of mobile. So people are more frenzy about that. Like, people like to do the things in a short span of time. So considering them into mind, and especially educated class, actually this end-to-end digital lending is something I think people are working on, and I think it is contributing significantly to a bank, you can say, overall lending portfolios. Like digital lending section, if you'll see, it has a very significant proportion of that. And yeah, finance is involved, so definitely there are some chances of money laundering. So anti-money laundering kind of areas are also like banks are working upon. And new things, if I say, like a lot of banks, because now things are like everybody's trying to build something like you can say a 360-degree touch point. So when I say 360-degree touch point, means like a lot of marketing channels are there. So whether it's Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, like Meta, and maybe YouTube. So there are so many marketing, even print medias. So like MarTech, or you can say media optimization models are also one of the key to ensure your marketing expenditure of products. And some of the areas banks are trying to explore more, like computer vision, or you can say uh, trying to build something like a chat GPT, but very much customized, considering the data, like PII data of banking industry. So these are I think some of the areas that especially like Indian banks are working upon.
Right. Could you please explain a little more about the first thing that you mentioned, right? The marketing and all the other thing were understood, but when you say risk analysis, or the first element that you mentioned, can you explain a little more about that? This is for the benefit of, we have around 230 of our OdinSchool learners right now. And not all of them are from the banking sector. I mean, we have a small percentage of them from BFSI. So if you could help the larger audience understand what exactly that means in terms of applying, because they're learning these technologies now, they're learning Python, they're learning SQL, they're learning visualization tools. So if you could help understand that function a little more.
So regarding risk, there are various parameters. So first is like you need to have a domain knowledge. First is like you need to discuss with the domain experts, like, okay, if for in general, what could be the possible risk in into banking? Okay, so there are various areas. I'll give definitely 2 to 3 examples to make it simple. So if I'm building something on digital side, so I think in India there are based on RBI approved CIC companies like Crifimark or Sibyl. So these things are there. Okay, so you can, Equifax was there, but currently I think they moved. So basically, one is like, okay, you need to have a good CIBIL score, let's say. Second thing is like you need to understand some risky indicators. So let's say if I give simple examples like how many times people are changing their mobile numbers and their addresses, these things could lead to potential risk. And at the same time, you need to understand the repayment patterns. If a person has taken any loan, then whether the person is paying things on time or how much delay is there, or if it is a credit card bill, then whether it is being paid on time or was the delay. So you can say delinquency in that. So very much specific to each and every areas of, you can say, banking, you need to understand possible risk associated with. And accordingly, of course, then while building the model, we dump all the demographics informations and all sorts of like, you can say NMI, EMI ratios, possible salary, and all sorts of information. Try to understand whether the person whom we are going to lend, whether the person has the repayment capability or not.
Right.
And accordingly, we design some risk indicators. And of course, banks have their own customized risk scoring metrics as well. That can be utilized, depends on the project.
Right. So you spoke specifically about domain experience, right? That some knowledge about the domain is necessary. So for somebody who comes from the finance background or banking background, who are looking to transition into a data science job, would that be an advantage to them? You know, a non-IT to IT kind of transition, somebody who's not from computer science now wants to learn these technologies, but comes with a domain knowledge. Would that be an advantage?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what I have felt. And in this industry, domain knowledge is the key. I mean, even if you see the hiring processes, okay, so you must see like in any other companies, like if you apply for some e-commerce company, or if you apply for some search engine companies, or if you apply for some, let's say, social network company, you'll see they primarily see, okay, you need to have a data science experience, and they do not dig deeper inside any specific domain. Right. Of course, that's good to have at some point of time in your career, but but in the banking industry, I think starting from the inception stage, they look forward like, okay, it's always good to have some banking knowledge, because I get, as I was saying before, if I am building something for, let's say, operational efficiency, I need to understand how banking operation works. I need to understand how, let's say, branches operation works. I need to understand the basic terms and like basic terminologies that bankers use on a daily basis. So if the person is having that kind of background, definitely it will help. But at the same time, we need to understand data science is is something you can say specifically into BFSI. It's a marriage between, you can say, a technology and domain knowledge.
Right.
So
Right.
there has to be, we are working as somewhere into the intersection of business as well as the technical person. So a lot of technicalities or expertise is not needed. You need to be knowing basic, let's say, SQL and Python, or if there is a tool, so it can be SAS or SPSS, or depends on the company. But at the same time, you need to understand how to gather your data and how to create a story out of that. Or if it is about the analysis, but if it is about, let's say, building a model, then if you have a good domain knowledge, then definitely it's easy to. And definitely if you have if you're not from, let's say, engineering background, or let's say not from coding background, I can say, then yeah, do some of the courses, get your hands dirty into some of the languages. I think nowadays even like Python is one of the easiest language I have like learned in my career. So it's easy to learn. SQL is always there because data rich industry this is, so SQL will be there. So I think these two things, I think will be good enough to start the career.
Great, thank you. I think that's good news for a lot of people who are from the finance background in our cohorts. And also SQL and Python are definitely the two most important technologies that we also teach as part of the bootcamp. That's the kind of input we get from the industry as well. So it's good to start off with. Now that we are on this topic, could you help us understand the journey of a data scientist, from the time a person first starts off as, the first job, the entry-level job, gets a break into the industry, to growth, consistent growth? What is the journey like? I mean, you have been through that cycle, so please share your experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of journey, depends, because nowadays there are a lot of, you can say, job titles has been coined into the market. So like data scientists, and you can say data translators, MLEs, machine learning engineers, data stewards, a lot of things are, I mean, if you go to the definitions, they have a very, there is a thin line between that. But I mean, when somebody joins, some of the times I have seen like people hire as a data scientist, but ask the people, ask the candidate to do some, let's say, simple data engineering stuff, or maybe some backend engineering kind of work. So I will say that's at early stage, it's good. Accept things with open heart, try to learn as much as possible, but it's always good to surround yourself with data science ecosystem, because data science is like, if somebody is transitioning, so let's say if somebody has joined, so first and foremost requirement is like, need to have a basic SQL, Python, and then plus on top of that, a person needs to be gradually need to learn the a deep dive of how algorithm works. They need to understand the maths, they need to understand the stats behind that, and then later point of time in their career, they have to start engaging with various stakeholders. So at that time, of course, they need to understand how to work with various departments. Various requirements comes from departments, and work with the stakeholder engagement. And gradually in the field of data science, we have to keep upskilling ourselves so that we can be, you can say, very competitive to the market. We talk in the same lingo, and gradually, like when we are progressing ahead in the same path in our career, then at some point of time, we have to think like, if from rollout perspective, it's like initially people usually do IC kind of roles, individual contributors, but later point of time when we have to build something complex or something which is seems easy, but actually when we start rolling out, then we understand, okay, things are not so easy. So basically have to have a good understanding in terms of architecture, how to roll out things. If I do these things, then what could be the possible pros and cons? Need to have a thorough understanding of A/B testing before doing any changes. So yeah, I mean, I'll say it in this way, like first few, let's say 3 to 5 years of the career, people have to know basically maths, stats, Python, SQL, very heavy on that. Gradually they need to understand about the solutions, like how to deploy ML models. So basically ML ops starts playing the role, and how to deploy, you can say, a multi-cloud kind of solutions or something in the cloud. So need to have some cloud understanding as well. It's not like you'll be happy with the Python and SQL. So you need to gradually upskill your knowledge, and later point of time, it depends, like people get the option, like whether you want to go ahead with the IC kind of roles, or you want to do something like managerial kind of thing. So in that case, you need to have definitely people management skills. Plus at the same time, I think in data science career, everybody is expecting you need to be very deep dive when it comes to ML. So whatever you do, you have to be very thorough. You need to be very explainable of whatever you are doing. So if I have built any model, I need to be in a situation to explain why those kind of outputs are. And progression I have explored. I have already told to you. So it depends on the company as well. Like sometimes every company has a different kind of a portfolio going forward, but that's in general. And later, yeah, after some point of time, when the people join as a senior management or you can say executives, then of course the role is totally different.
Right. There's one question from a participant that I'd like to take now because it's very relevant to what we're discussing right now. So this is a student who's working in a bank currently, and she is upskilling herself in data sciences, and she wants to know what kind of projects that she can work on currently as practice to help her move into the data sciences in the banking domain, because she, I think, has this combination of data science plus domain knowledge. And you also mentioned that you started off with exploring and experimenting with Kaggle data sets and all of that. Could you suggest a few projects that our students can work on within this domain?
I will recommend to start working with lead generation kind of things for digital lending. So why I'm saying this thing, because lead generations are something which those are usually a short-term projects, and at the same time it will give a good confidence to understand specifically about one area. So let's say if I am building one model for, let's say the people who are doing very heavy UPI transactions or something, and we want to target them in terms of some sort of lending. Or there can be, let's say in India we have a Kisan credit cards, okay, or maybe in general like credit cards. So we have to provide the leads, okay, who are the eligible persons. So why I'm saying lead generation is one of the thing that person can work upon is because in a short span of time you'll understand that specific domain, how it works, by using data science and ML algorithms. And yeah, that is something that if you do more those kind of things, then definitely you can showcase in your portfolio as well. Because I think nowadays digital lending, if the customer base is good enough, then while doing this kind of lead generations and digital lending kind of thing, you can easily showcase how much contribution you are actually you have done in the business. So like I have seen some of my friends, they are doing digital lending and they showcase very like in a very, their numbers are very fancy. They are like in crores, like 400-500 crores of lending they have done just for targeting a specific area. So lead generation is something definitely she can work upon. And another thing, if she get time, definitely explore risk analytics. So basically a risk-based model. And it depends on interest or some specific area, basically how risk modeling works and how to design. So these are the two things I can suggest that can be achieved in a short span of time.
Great. Now, there are a lot of people who, domain knowledge usually comes with experience, right? For a fresher, once you're in the industry for say at least 5 years or 3 to 5 years at least, that is when you start understanding that domain and you get that domain knowledge irrespective of the function. Even if you're in the marketing side, you understand the domain probably when you're working for at least 3 to 5 years. So how does that happen for a fresher to get into data science with not much domain knowledge except what they have probably studied in the college in that subject? How does it work for you? How can they prepare themselves to launch their career in these domain specific industries?
I think at early stage, do heavy maths, stats, SQL, Python. These 4 things are the key to start to launch yourself, because I think taking the first step is always a challenge, right? So when we when we hire from, let's say, fresh grads from universities or like across banking industry or anywhere into the data science world, then usually the questions we ask is like, okay, explain about examples, how it works. The person need to understand the maths, the stats behind that. What are the basic, you can say, evaluation criteria you need to understand. So it's like these kind of questions and these kind of things are, of course, like has been asked into the industry for for the last couple of years. But at the same time, I think people are now focusing on maths, like whether the candidate is able to explain in a simplistic possible manner. So, and wherever you will go, definitely you have to work with the data.
Right.
And if you're working with the data, then the first language or first tool that interacts with the data is SQL. So you have to be very thorough with SQL. You need to know basic join operations, some inner queries, how to play around with the tables, and of course, if the customer is if the candidate is not having the domain expertise, of course that would not be the case at early stage of career. Then you need to think like a customer, think like a customer. And if I give example of, let's say, a BFSI, then if you are building some model, then you have to explain. You need to be a good storyteller based on the data. Think like, okay, if this is the data which has been given to me and I have to explain it to my senior management, then how can I connect all the dots and explain it in a very simplistic manner? So for that, I mean, domain knowledge is not required, but if you need to be, you need to do a good fact analysis. You need to do a good kind of EDAs, expertise data analysis, and understand what are the hidden facts and try to replicate the same. Because your seniors must be the domain experts, and that's how you will learn. You'll explain, you'll tell your understanding whatever you have digested after doing the data analysis or fact analysis, and then later point of time while building your model, you'll get the same kind of feedback. So storytelling, heavy SQL, and focus on your algos, maths, stats, those kind of things.
Right. I think that's very good insight, because I can see a lot of questions coming on these lines, from people who are from non-finance, non-banking. How can they make the cut? So essentially what you're telling is, if it is an entry-level job, not many questions are asked about the domain expertise as such, but they would be required to have some general knowledge about the domain, right? And I think that level of preparation is possible to do with the kind of information we have access to these days. So good with math, good with SQL, good with Python, with a general understanding of how the domain works from the customer's viewpoint, not even as an industry, as a domain expert's viewpoint. So that is a combination that with the mindset with which they have to go into the interview. Did I summarize that correctly, Avinash?
Yeah, right.
All right, great. So when it comes specifically to math, what level of math is required?
I mean, you should be in a position to explain, as I gave example of, like, let's say XGBoost or some, let's say random forest or some linear regression. So how it works basically. So you need to understand the maths. You need to understand the equations behind that. So you need to understand by unit change of one feature, how it is going to impacting the output variable. So basically, it's a relationship between dependent and independent variables. If you are doing XGBoost or light GBM or any kind of gradient boosting trees, you need to understand basic things, how gradient boosting tree works, and you need to understand the maths behind that. You need to understand basic multiplications of matrix if it comes to neural networks. So people will not go really deep dive, but they will understand whether you have a basic understanding about what is the cost function. If you are using, let's say ReLUs inside your neural network, then how actually recurrent rectified linear unit works. So basic information, I'll say. So ideally what happens is, like, if you are saying something, because I too have taken some of the interviews in the past, so I see what happens is, like, we usually don't go with the mindset like, okay, we have to reject the candidates. Everybody's like, because the time is the key. So we go with the attitude like, okay, we have to select the candidate. And at the same time, we need to understand whether the candidate is able to explain things in a simplistic possible manner. So whatever you are saying, be very picky, be very choosy with your words. Don't say something that you're not aware about just because you have read in a blog. So ensure also, like, your source of knowledge. I'll say that is because I remember during early stage of my career, I read XGBoosting from one of the source, and actually the source itself was wrong.
Oh. Okay.
So we have to be very careful, like, from where we are reading and studying. And so, yeah, basic things are required like this.
Right. So basically, you're saying the application of these things need to be explained. So essentially, what you're saying is the way they present themselves, the way they articulate what they know is very, very important.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So let's just take an example. Okay. Now, in my experience also, what I see is one standard question that is asked in every interview by every technical head is to get these aspirants to talk about the projects that they have worked on. Yeah. Right. So that is one of the standard questions. So tell me a little bit about what projects you have worked on. So let us say, take the example that you mentioned, right? You said lead generation. I'm sorry, lending example that you gave us. How should one talk about a project that they have worked on in an interview? Is there a sequence? Is there a logic to it? Because simply telling that this is the project and these are the technologies will not cut it, right? A little bit of storytelling element and all have to come into it. So as an interviewer, what kind of answer would you expect when you ask a candidate to talk about the projects?
I think it depends on totally a project, but let's say if I'll not take lending, but because recently I'm working more on operational efficiency. So let me take example of that. Give it liberty. So if somebody has mentioned like, okay, let's say I have worked upon some operational efficiency kind of models, then what I like to see is like first, what kind of things you have done. Okay, what are your data sources, and what is the nature of your data? Is it a very much structured data or unstructured data? So by answering these things, I'll understand the candidate has the experience of working on structured, semi-structured, and structured data. So that is one key takeaway that I'll be looking for when the candidate is saying that. Then what kind of things you have done, whether you how you extracted your data. So like I can explain, okay, we use let's say the data was segregated or data was placed into various tables. So we had written SQL queries and prepared the data set. Later point of time, while doing exploratory data analysis, we figured out like, okay, there are some of the geographical locations in India where frauds are happening quite often as compared to other locations. So I'll understand, okay, the customer is, okay, so candidate is having a storytelling as well. He or she is able to explain the data that business unit can understand. And then how I have done. So apart from that, we can say like, okay, while doing the data cleaning, data massaging, what you have done, like whether, so when I'm answering these things, so I should be including these things. So for example, like I can say if the data was imbalanced, then what kind of techniques I have used, whether it's overrated kind of techniques or some general techniques, or maybe I have done some research on that, or I have followed some my intuition, not just like done some smooth and upscale or downscale the data. Maybe there's some smarter way to do that. Okay, so these kind of things. And towards when I'm progressing towards model building, then whether I concluded my data. When I say the data conclusion, it means like, okay, I have done enough of the data exploration, I understood. So I need to summarize the facts into, let's say, 3 to 4 slides, or you can say 3 to 4 bullet points. Okay, this data was about this, and there was this kind of data issues, and I have solved the data issues by doing XYZ analysis or some statistical techniques. And later point of time, I think this is my population base, which I think is good enough to fit inside the model training. So now I understand, okay, the person has followed a proper approach, proper techniques. And then towards the training, I mean, if you have done the modeling and what kind of modeling you have done, if you have done hyperparameter operation, whether you know about each and every hyperparameters, or you have just used whatever has been given by some AutoML kind of things. So even if that's not bad, if you have used it, you should be in a position to explain. So that is something I need to explain. And then towards the end, what has happened to the model? Okay, so of course, if it's classification, you can give your some sort of ROC or accuracy metrics, but at the same time, same goes for the regression as well. But moving ahead, I'll be more interested to understand what happened to the model. What happened to the model, whether you were able to deliver it, whether your model has been productionized, whether what has happened after that, whether it is serving the purpose for the purpose you have made it. So those kind of things, and some technicalities. Of course, inside this we go deeper. like it depends on the explanation, we go deeper. So there has to be flow starting with the data extraction. So to model deployment, I'll say, if it's not model deployment, then at least model up to the stage of model building has been finished. And then try to, when I'm answering, then I'll see what kind of areas you have worked upon and what kind of problem statements you tried to solve, what were the hurdles you faced, and whether it was like you sat in front of your PC and you was building the model, or whether continuously you were getting some kind of feedbacks. Because if you are a domain expert, then it's okay. If you're not a domain expert, if you are early, the person who has recently started doing the model building, who is your model reviewer? Like whether, so basically you try to interact, try to get feedback. The customer, the candidates have this kind of attitude, like to interact with the people to gain the knowledge from the peer group. So these kind of thing, because I think cultural fit is something also a lot of people, companies are looking for. It's not like, okay, you are damn good in data science, but we need to see whether you are good fit for the organization.
Right. I think that was really good insight, because a lot of our students, in fact, when we make them work on the project, there's also a part where we encourage them to present their projects and then take feedback and keep working on it. Because that is one, if I think if that one project presentation can be done really effectively, they stand a good chance of getting that job.
Yeah.
Would you agree with me?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, project is something that I think starting with early stage of the career to mid-career to senior, everybody is asking what sort of projects has been done.
Right.
So if you are, you can articulate it in a seamless manner, I think it's one of the key to succeed into any interview.
Right. So this is a very strong message to all the 300 odd attendees that we have. Work on as many projects as you can, but along with that, also practice how to talk about the project. That is as important when it comes to cracking an interview as working on the project itself. Of course, they're not mutually exclusive. You can't do one without the other. But do not just be satisfied that I did a great project, I got the output, and I have solved the problem statement. It doesn't end there, because all of you are here because you're looking to crack interviews. So also the next stage is to practice how you story tell with it, how you explain your project. So please give equal importance to that part of project work as well. That is what will actually help you. Fine. So this is another interesting question. About the data.
I like to just add one thing, because we all need to understand the data scientists are not something like the kind of job where you'll go to the office and sit in front of machine and go back to your home. Whatever analysis you are doing, you have to explain that. So if you are doing something, you need to reach out to maybe senior or executives, depends on your ladder. You have to explain what you have done. So it's more like on a real-time feedback kind of system. So whatever you are doing, you have to explain, okay, why you have done that. So there is, I think pretty much every company, they have this kind of, okay, your model has been built. Okay, let's have a presentation for that. So in the presentation, you need to be very, you can say thorough and deep, whatever you have done. So explanation is one of the key. So I think that can be checked from the interview stage itself.
Right. So there's one question, maybe if you could address that now. How does the data of the banking sector, is that very different from other financial sectors like insurance, debt, stock market? Is there a large difference in that kind of data sets? So that's the question by Nagaraju.
I mean, like when I say like in SBI, we have, SBI has a JVs as well, joint ventures. So SBI Mutual Fund, SBI Capital, SBI Life, SBI Credit Card. So of course, we don't have like data access to that. There is a data policy. But about in general banking sector, I'll say majority of the data is structured. Because as I said before, because of the nature we capture the data. But at the same time, when we are trying to build some 360-degree persona of a data of any specific customer, then we do not rely on our data. In India, down the line, we are going to have like, of course, right now as well, we do have a system called as account aggregators. So using that, customer can, with the help of customer consent, we can access the customer, you can say, behavior into other banks as well. So gradually, like that's what RBI and Finance Ministry is trying to do. And so basically the nature of the data as of now, you can say primarily structured, but at the same time, there are various media sources from where we get the real-time sentiments. There are a lot of resources and a lot of third-party data. So banking is not very much limited to just, you can say, their own data. We are also exploring third-party data like, okay, what is the electricity utilization of your house? Maybe it can help me to understand your income. Okay, or maybe it will help me to understand whether you have a risk-taking capability when you come to me and I lend it to you. So basic idea is like when third-party data comes, so they have a different format. They have their own specific format. It can be flat file, or it can be in the format of JSON, so that we have to process upon, or it can be anything. So usually, like nowadays, this audio video signals. So it can be in that format. I think video KYC is something I think we all are aware about. Like in many banks, they have already started, specifically after COVID. So those kind of data. In the format of video that is totally unstructured. So yeah, these kind of data is there.
Right. So in the last few years, we have seen technology changing very, very fast, and you've probably had firsthand experience with how quickly the technology is changing. So in this kind of a dynamic situation, what do you think are the few skills, not technically and non-technical, technology and non-technology wise? What are the top 3 or top 5 skills that a person should start learning to sustain their career in this domain for a long time?
I mean, if from career I'm taking, you're talking about data science career, because career can be anything.
Yeah.
So in data science, definitely, as I said before, like there is a progression stage, right? So we are progressing after a couple of years, or maybe on almost on a daily basis as well. Like we see some sort of progress. But in terms of technologies, I guess SQL will be there for sure.
Right.
Because the reason is like you have to interact with the data. So using SQL, I mean, down the line, if there is something, a new invention or a new thing comes into the market, then that's a different story. But of course, it will be very similar to SQL. So, but as of now, at least for next 10 to 15 years, it is there. So SQL is one of the key programming, key language, you can say. Person has to be very thorough with. At the same time, R and Python, person has to be a command on that, because a lot of companies, they focus on these open source languages. The main reason is like it's free. Okay, you don't have to pay any penny for that. On the other hand, like there are so many tools, but tools are, of course, we have to pay the license cost for that. So from the you can say the cost cutting point of view also, we need to think, okay, if down the line company has stopped taking a license, then we should not rely on any specific tool.
Right.
So be more open source, and at the and in terms of competitive, in terms of to be competitive, or in terms of to be in a situation to grow up in the ladder, as I said, two important thing is like need to have a stakeholder engagement, need to understand stakeholder engagement, gain as much as domain knowledge as possible for your liked industry. If you want to work upon e-commerce, if you want to work upon CPG retail, if you want to work upon, let's say, BFSI, fintech, or Airbnb kind of business models, or anything, just gain the domain knowledge, because I think we all talk about the innovations being done by like chat GPTs, AI is proliferating differently across industry, right? So what is happening is the key people who are having basically the domain knowledge, actually they are the key drivers. Okay, they cannot be replaced. So because they know how it works, they know how to engage with various stakeholders to roll out any project. So these are the key things. And at the same time, if it is only about the data science career, then as we progress, we have to we have to start connecting all sorts of possible dots and create our story, create our analysis, create our model building. Need to have a very deep dive thorough experience on specific domain and how to combine that domain with the help of these languages or some sort of technologies and deliver it. So yeah, that's something I can say. It's not a very you can say linear equation or kind of answer that if then that will happen. It's more like you need to touch various dots.
Right. There's another interesting question. I mean, as an interviewer, when you're interviewing a fresher level or an entry level person in the data sciences, do you actually look for an Excel or advanced Excel as a skill, as a good to have or a must have kind of skill?
I mean, I have seen, I mean, personally, if you ask me, I'll say, as I said before, a tool is something I do not judge people for. Like if you know XYZ tool, then I'll hire you unless there is a dedicated need in the company. Okay, let's say Tableau developer. If the company doesn't have that kind of developer, then definitely company will focus on Tableau or Power BI. Okay. But about Excel or something, definitely it's good to do short analysis, like with a small volume of data. It's always good to do a quick analysis kind of things. And if the candidate is having that kind of knowledge, it's always good to do EDAs in a quickest possible manner. But that is something I mean, some banks and it depends on your, I mean, where you're applying for. Some companies might look after it, like need to have a good knowledge of Excel. They can ask you complex formulas as well. Depends on the interviewer. But in general, that is something barely being checked, because we know like it can be done.
Right. Another very interesting question is a data scientist job a very stressful job?
I'd say here it's all about the responsibilities, because data science is not like something nowadays. It's getting mature day by day. So at the same time, as a human, we also have to keep it up. Okay, we need to learn a lot of technologies, a lot of algorithms, maybe read some source code, how to basically process or prepare the data to feed inside the model. So it can be stressful if the person is not knowing, if the person is not good how to play with the data in that way, then it can be stressful. If you are good I mean, I can say if you know what is your end deliverables. So usually a lot of people, they get diverted. The end goal is let's say about some risk modeling, but you get diverted in between in here and there, and you started focusing more on some specific area which is not very much related to your end delivery. So focus on the end part. First decide your end part, and everything has to be in support of reaching to that end part. So if you are that kind of person, then it will not be too much of stress. If you are a person who, like as an engineer or I have seen some of the people, including me as well, like to work on the last couple of days, and if that is the situation, then you can face some stress. But at the same time, I'll say confidence is one of the key. You have to be very confident with whatever you are doing, because at some stage you have to represent your model. And that's what happens into BFSI specifically. So you need to be very confident. You need to be very sure what you have done. Even if it's a very simple analysis, if you're doing on Azure or simple plain vanilla SQL queries or very simple pandas functions, just be very thorough. Just prepare 7 to 8 bullet points. If you have done those kind of things, it will be easy to go. Otherwise, if you don't know how to connect the dots, how to reach out to the end delivery, it can be stressful. And at the same time, definition of stress is also about like how many projects you are working upon, and what kind of complexity your project is associated with. So if your project is about long term, then there can be some frustration in between, like, because long term projects are like, I mean, expectations are very different. And if you're working on short term projects, then of course there is a different expectations. So Yeah, these kind of things are there. I mean, if you're working upon multiple projects, can be stress. If you're working in a company where you're at a time you are given only one project, so it will be easy to work upon or easy to focus on, you can say. So totally depends on. I can say in one line is like your environment where exactly you're working. So when I say environment, it's not about the company; it's about your team, your boss, your small, like you can say, a department where you're working.
Right. There are a lot of factors involved actually when it comes to stress, right? But finally, it comes down to how focused you are, how well you can prioritize your things, how well you can organize, and how focused you can be, and not get distracted. I think stress is part of everybody's job. It's not just data science or BFSI. It's not domain specific. It's agnostic to domain, agnostic to designation. I think it's more to do with how personally you're able to organize your time and the resources that you have.
I think, as I said before, like if you have done your homework well, if you have done your preliminary requirement of SQL, Python, math, stats, and if you have done enough work on that, I think it will be easy. Yeah, project wise, it can differ, but I think you will be confident in your entire career of data science. You'll be more confident. Okay, I know how it works. I know even if there is a short span of time, I know how to run Python. I know which algorithm should be utilized. And a lot of time, what will happen is like you'll not get problem. Maybe at early stage of career, you can get a problem which you can find somewhere into the Kaggle or some blog post, and you can try to mimic the same into your own data. But later point of time, when the problem is totally new, you're doing something new for the industry or for humanity or for anything, then you have to think totally fresh. At that time, if you're working for some company, then definitely there is a timelines, and I mean, it can be negotiated. You can discuss like how to achieve the timeline in the quickest possible manner, considering the product quality as well. So yeah, that is the situation. Depends on the company, depends on how well you have done your homework. When I say homework, so that's what I explained before. And then you'll be confident. You'll be confident enough to deliver.
Right. Another question here from one of our attendees: is DSA a necessary skill for data science? Data structures and algorithm, is that an essential skill that you look for while you hire?
If the goal is kind of man companies like Meta, Apple, Amazon, Google, those kind of companies, like top-notch, very tech-savvy companies, I'll say, then they have one round of DSA. They will definitely ask DSA. You cannot move out from that. But the beauty is like for data scientist role, they have changed their processes. I have seen now they ask more SQL. SQL can be complex, so be ready with that. But about data structures and algorithms, many companies just prefer to check whether you can code or not. Okay. But yeah, if it is about, as I said, man companies, depends on your interviewer. They can go really deep to understand the space and time complexities, whether how well you are, how well or how good you are in terms of writing the highly optimized codes. But I doubt this is the case into data scientists, because even for like without taking the name of the company, I'll say even like including these companies in man companies, now I think they are focusing more on algo side. So when I say algo, it's not like they might ask you to write, let's say, how to write a pseudocode or how to write a pseudocode of or basic code of k-means clustering. So it's more on, it will be more specific to data science only. If you're really unlucky, then yeah, definitely you'll get data science algorithm questions.
Okay, so one more question, which is very, very relevant to you. I think you'll be able to answer it very relevantly. It says this one attendee who's been working in one of the public sector's bank for the last 2.5 years. Are there any internal exams or something that are conducted within the private sector banks that will help him transition into data sciences? He's in the public sector bank, but not in the data sciences domain right now.
Sorry, so your question was like the candidate was in PSB and then now the candidate is into private bank?
No. He is in the public sector bank right now for the last 2.5 years, and he's looking to transition into the data sciences domain.
Okay.
In the public sector bank, but not in the data science domain of the public sector bank. So he's asking, is there any internal exams or are there any exams like that that he'll have to attempt within the public sector system?
In PSBs, what happens is like there is no exams are there as far as I know, at least for SBI, I can say. What is there is like whenever they have a hiring, so usually whenever there is a requirement, they put it on the portal, and of course it's a pan India advertisement. So anybody, whether it's internal candidate or external, it doesn't matter. So it's always good, like if you have a knowledge, like even in our department as well, like people have joined who were already working into some of the PSBs. So it's like very fair. It's like you have to pass the interview after, of course, once your CV is shortlisted, and then internal exams, it's not there. Of course, exams are there. I mean, the people who are working into PSBs, they might be knowing, but that's more for, like, say, for the sake of increments or for the sake of promotions, but not specifically for data scientists.
Okay. We'll take one last question. We're running out of time. As an interviewer, are there certain things that you like to see in a resume? Because that is your first introduction to the candidate. What are the kind of things that you like to see in a resume that will, kind of help you decide whether you want to interview that person or not?
I think one, I mean, if it is about, let's say, me, then I'll see what all tools and technologies that we are using, whether candidate is having knowledge of that. It's always good to have the similar knowledge, and so that we cut short the KT process. We can talk in the same lingo because the customer is already, candidate is already having the knowledge of that. So I think mostly depends on the company. If the company is, let's say, working on PySpark on AWS, and their technology stack is something like AWS, PySpark, and maybe Scala or maybe Python, then I'll always look for that. Like that company will always look for those kind of keywords. And so it's more like nowadays, I think it's many people are also saying, if you are applying for some company, so go through with the job description very carefully, try to understand what is the requirement. And you might have a similar kind of requirement or a little bit of twisted requirement. Try to match it based on their expectations, so that you can increase your chances of selection. So that is something that I guess everybody, even if I apply to, let's say, your organization, then you'll see like whether the candidate is having teaching experience, or let's say some public speaking experience, or some sort of like training experience, because those are the couple of keywords, right? So similar thing happens into hiring as well.
Right. Great. I think we have come to the end. Any last parting words, suggestions for our learners?
I mean, it was a good time for me. And in terms of data science, I'll say don't take too much of pressure, because at the end of the day, it's just one of the field. Okay. Try to find out the interesting areas, because data science is into various industries. As I said, like BFSI, CPG, retail, even like manufacturing, and any industry, whatever you have. Even I have seen like some people have the background into metallurgy, and they are doing some sort of data science over there. So find out your domain area that interests you most, and then try to solve the problem. Data science, I'll say, is also a way of solving the problem in that's like very much data centric approach. So find industry, have some cool and calm in your life. Don't take too much of pressure or something like, okay, this is one of the field I have to focus on, whether I know Python or don't know Python or don't know SQL. Find out the area. I have seen some of the people who are still doing very good as a mobile developer or UX developer or UI developers, and they are very happy. They are earning a good amount of salary. They are very happy. They are doing what their passion. So I'll say, if it is your passion, then definitely follow for it. There is a huge scope into the future. I mean, specifically in India, government is also having a very robust ecosystem, and they are promoting AI like anything. And not only the government, but also, I mean, into corporates also, you'll see almost everywhere it is proliferating. I mean, everybody, almost every second or third person you might have heard like using AI for any specific thing. HR, corporates, or any area, you name it, you'll get it. So just I mean, if that's your passion, just follow it. There is a huge scope in that, and that's what I can say. Yeah, that's it. Try to be more innovative in your approach. That will definitely help you. But apart from that, I think the bottom line is like, just be happy and don't take too much of pressure. That's it.
Yep. Thanks, Avinash. Thank you very much. And lots of interesting insights. There are lots of questions flowing through. So what we can do is probably consolidate these questions into certain buckets, and probably if you could answer them offline through a mail or something, we can always post it back on our LMS, if that's fine with you.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Thank you very much again. Thanks all the attendees. It was a great session. We'll come back next week again with another interesting talk. And thanks. Have a good weekend, all of you. Thanks, Avinash.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Yes. Thank you, Shruti, and thank you, Avinash.